So God has prompted my wife to start reading the Bible again, and usually when God does this to my wife, it causes her to read chapters upon chapters at a time. And my wife started asking me questions about Ephesians chapter 2, because that is where God had her begin reading, is in the book of Ephesians. Allow me to introduce to all of you the verse that my wife got very stuck on. And it kind of stumped me right away. It took my studies in demonology and studying other religions to get to the bottom of it. This is Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. Well, the ruler of the kingdom of the air, it threw my wife off. She had asked me, why do we associate that with Satan? What makes everybody jump to the conclusion that the ruler of the air is Satan? Well, this is where things get a little bit interesting, because boy, did this send me down a freaking rabbit hole. If you like this video, don't forget to hit like, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and hit that notification bell to be updated on all of my videos. Much of my demonology videos and deep Bible study videos will go here. I do have another channel called Izzy Spooks, where it's less scripture and more just scary stuff. That's where that's going to go, as well as my series that is coming up called Hollywood and Demonology. And that's going to be where I break down pop culture in films and TV shows and compare that to the occult. Where do they tie in, and why do they tie in some instances? Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Why is Satan referred to as a principality of the air? Well, the very first verse that popped in my head when I was thinking on Satan being associated with the wind was actually where Satan isn't mentioned at all. It's in Mark chapter 4, the chapter before Jesus goes and starts speaking to the man who was possessed by Legion. If we are to come to the conclusion that Satan is the prince of the power of the air, then anytime we're seeing the wind and the air manipulated, we should compare and contrast in the scriptures. And in some instances, start comparing and contrasting to other religions. So we will start in Mark chapter 4, verses 37 through 39. Pay attention to this. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. It was about to go down. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Now, one could argue it is a combination of wind and waves. Of course, this is how the elements work. But Jesus spoke to the wind first. And if the devil is the prince of the power of the air, then that's where we need to be focusing on. Now, I'm not sure how to say this next god's name. I'm pretty sure it's Rimmon. You can find him in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 18. And it's a small snippet. You're not going to see him very much. Because, and I want to emphasize this, the Bible is about the living. It's for the living. It's not for the dead. It's not for other gods. But you will see other gods mentioned in the Bible. So you'll get teeny tiny cross references. This is one of them. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the same man who took a bunch of dirt with him. Why did he want the dirt? He wanted the dirt because it came from the territory of the Israelites. This was God's dirt. It was God's land. And he wanted as much of it as he could have, because he did not want to go back and bow to that other god. He didn't want anything to do with Rimmon anymore. He wanted Yahweh. But this is, of course, before the time of Christ, before Jesus defeated all the other principalities. If you have not watched my video on the other gods of the Bible, I'm going to put it up here somewhere. That is very beneficial for you to understand that Rimmon is one of these gods. But it turns out that Rimmon had other names. And we're going to pull up a source right here, and I'm going to show you guys. Notice at the very top here, it says Hadad. This is an ancient god, also known as Had, or Hadda, I guess is how you say that, or Hadu, or the Old Testament Rimmon. His attributes were identical with those of Adad, of the Syro-Babylonian pantheon. You'll see here where it says he was the chief Baal, and of course Baal also means Lord. And when Jeremiah is referencing Baal, it's referring to Baal as almost like the Baal, and this would be chief Baal. Now, when Hadad was referenced as Hadad, he was referenced as a Baal. And when he was referenced as a Baal, when you start getting into the Canaanites, he was represented as a bearded deity, often holding a club and a thunderbolt. and wearing a horned headdress. The bull was the symbolic animal of Hadad, as of the Hittite deity Teshub, who was identical with him. And if that isn't terrifying enough to think that this could be Satan, take a look at this. There are many references that you can find on this, many sources. I decided to pull from Big Think because they were more biased the other direction, and so I want to show you guys just how far out the other direction can go. Of course, the big title, Let There Be God, How Yahweh Became God Almighty. We're going to skip down here because this is going to be where all of a sudden Yahweh starts getting associated as this wind god. They treat titles like these as a gotcha. Yahweh worship also had its roots in the ancient religion of Canaan, the land which God promised to Abraham. Within this polytheistic religion, Yahweh was but one of many deities united under a figure known as El. In the northwestern Semitic language spoken in Canaan, El had multiple meanings. It was the word for God, the name of a specific god, and the title of a god who stood removed from other lesser gods. Kind of like how the God of the Bible has the capital G versus the other gods like in Psalm 82 or the devil being referenced in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4, where it is clearly a lowercase g, showing that distinction between the two, at least when it's translated into the English language. The lesser gods included Yahweh, Asherah, which is supposed to be basically Yahweh's wife in the Canaanite pantheon, and Baal, whose worshippers went on to challenge Yahweh's supremacy in Israel. Yahweh and Baal were merely two of El's 70 children, according to the mythology. Each child of El was given a region to look after. So now we have a case of mistaken identity when we see Yahweh's name pop up in Canaan. Now, this is not the only time that Yahweh actually starts getting confused with another god. It is common throughout history, I kid you not, that Yahweh will get mixed up with the devil. Why is this? The devil goes by many names. Yahweh goes by one. He is the Father of heaven. He is the Father of all creation. The devil, Satan, or as his name is here, Baal-Hadad, is not a creator, and he is not greater than Yahweh. You can see where Yahweh got flipped on his head, being referenced as a god who was assigned Israel. This is the story of Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9. It's the polar opposite of what actually happened. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. This is where the enemy tends to borrow from God. This happens a lot. And a lot of it started in the Tower of Babel, which is what Deuteronomy 32 is referencing here. Except that God was not just stuck with Israel. He alienated everybody else and chose Israel. This is where the Israelite came from. It came from Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel. Now we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, and I'm going to show you what starts happening here in Jeremiah, because many of the Israelites started running to the Canaanites, and they were worshiping gods there. This is Jeremiah chapter 19, verses 4 through 5. For they have forsaken me, and made this place of foreign gods. They have burned incense in it to gods that neither they nor their ancestors nor the kings of Judah ever knew. And they have filled this place with the blood of the innocent. They have built the high places of Baal to burn their children in the fire as offerings to Baal, something I did not command or mention, nor did it enter my mind. In other translations of the Bible, it actually says that he did not decree this. So no, for those who believe in determinism, God does not determine all things. Not everything that comes to pass actually pops in the mind of God. Now we're going to skip to Jeremiah chapter 23, and we're going to be going through a handful of verses here. I have heard what the prophets say, who prophesy lies in my name. They say, I had a dream. I had a dream. How long will this continue in the hearts of these lying prophets who prophesy the delusions of their own minds? They think the dreams they tell to one another will make people forget my name, just as their ancestors forgot my name through Baal worship. Let the prophet who has a dream recount the dream, but let the one who has my word speak it faithfully. For what has straw to do with grain, declares the Lord? Is not my word like fire, declares the Lord, and like a hammer that breaks a rock in pieces? You could say that God took it a little personal, and rightfully so. The Israelites turned their backs on him once again as we see many of times in the Old Testament. And we can see, according to the article that we looked over, that this was the same area, this is the same event where God is associated with Baal at all. They started to slander God. Therefore, declares the Lord, I am against the prophets who steal from one another words supposedly from me. Yes, declares the Lord, I am against the prophets who wag their own tongues and yet declare, the Lord declares. Indeed, I am against those who prophesy false dreams, declares the Lord. They tell them and lead my people astray with their reckless lies. Yet I did not send or appoint them. They do not benefit these people in the least, declares the Lord. And like I said earlier, the Greek god Zeus is based on these older gods that are actually Satan. So let me actually show you one more thing when it comes to Paul referencing the unknown God in the book of Acts. As it says here, this is Acts chapter 17, verse 28. For in him we live and move and have our being, as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. This is in reference to the unknown God that has no image. Paul saw this and he immediately started to pull from other religions and then applying those religions to that unknown God. Now, what is we are his offspring? What story does this come from? Which poet is Paul actually referencing here? The poet that Paul is referencing is Aratus. And the work that Paul is referencing is, I guess you would say that as Phenomena. Now, if you would like to look at this poem, I'm actually going to put it in the description below for you guys to read, because Paul read it. And I'm sick of these pastors saying that we do not need to be reading the works of other people that are attributing their devotion, giving their attention to foreign gods. We should be reading these writings because Paul read them. How do I know Paul read them for a fact? If we actually go right through here, we can see the poem itself right in here. From Zeus, let us begin. Him do we mortals never leave unnamed. Full of Zeus are all the streets and all the marketplaces of men. Full is the sea and the havens thereof. Always we all have need of Zeus, for we are also his offspring. There's the reference, and what you just saw right there is, in conclusion, what demonology is. This god right here, Zeus, goes back to the wind god of Babylon, the same wind god that is the prince of the power of the air, and in reference to Rimmon of 2 Kings. This is how Satan works. He is an unnamed god. He is called many different things, and he is treated like he is everywhere at once. Satan likes to appear as omnipresent. He is not everywhere at once, but he likes to appear as such. He likes to be like God. He doesn't want a name. He doesn't want a face. And once again, do not forget to hit like on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel where I continue shining light on the Bible and these weird questions of the Bible that my wife keeps on wanting to ask me. And I'm very happy that she did ask me because, wow, this took all of my experience in studying the scriptures and other religions and then applying them. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, I will see you all in the next video. Take care. God bless.